ke Chodang Soke Chonam La Janjo Badu Dani Kyab Suchi Dagi Jin So Ki Pe Sonam Ki Drola Pencher Sangye Dropashu. To the excellent Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I go for refuge until the attainment of enlightenment through the merit of my generosity and so forth. May I attain Buddhahood for the sake of benefiting beings.
Okay, so I will still continue with the topic of analytical meditation. The one main goal or purpose of analytical meditation is that how to transform our intellectual understanding into our experiential state of mind, and then eventually it will become a realization. So the analytical meditation plays a role of bridge between the understanding and the experience, and then the realization. So today I will try to explain because when we say analyzing our experience or mind, we might feel it's very random or it's very vast. But if you categorize, actually it's not that difficult. We can categorize them into 2 or 3. In Buddhism, we call you can basically see there's a 2 kind of mind that happens by its functioning. So we call it sometimes, because when you do the meditation, you're trying to establish, or you're trying to see something, right? In a way, experience something. And this can be happen categorically, whether you are doing it through the direct perception This is one part of experience that we have. And then other is sometimes we call it the inferential experiences. Yeah? Means something that is not direct, but you're kind of getting some kind of understanding or picture based on certain things. Maybe let's call it the direct perception, cognition, mind. Usually we use the word direct perception, valid cognition, or the cognition. Valid in the sense that we are trying to understand something through certain kind of process. And if it is proved like that, you can stop there and say, okay, this is this. Yeah? Or this is flower. Okay. The other one is indirect in the sense, because it's not your direct experience, but it comes with what kind of habitual tendencies you have or not. One. And it is the assumption of your previous memory or previous experiences. And also it uses such as the sound, image, and then try to make a sense what you're trying to say or what it is. And because of the relationship. So the first one is direct. It doesn't use images or sound. It just experiences it. And the second one is indirect. It needs some sort of habit, and it uses the mental images, concepts, and trying to make sense. And this is what we call the conceptual or the inferential valid cognition of mind. Let's say direct mind, direct perception, and then conceptual mind. Yeah. So if you analyze yourself, we have these two minds actually. It doesn't matter whatever is happening. It always goes back or comes into these two categories. One that you experience without much logic or reason or images, and one you make sense of something. You make a story based on the image, sound, memory, see whether it makes sense or not. Let's say, for example, my eye consciousness, eye cognition, so to speak, is a direct perception in the sense that when I have a proper conditions, there's a flower, there's my eye sense, and then there's a light, and because all the causes and conditions there, the moment my eye encounter the object, it recognizes it. It's somehow related to, of course, the six mind. We have the five consciousness in the mind, yeah, but by function, I'm not conceptualizing, or I'm not using a word, or I'm not using a mental image to see that flower. It's happening more direct. And usually our sense are the first moment of our sense experience are always the direct perception. So when you hear the actual sound, it's a direct perception. We are not conceptualizing the sound. Of course, after that few seconds, we try to investigate, good sound, bad sound, or what is the sound coming from, or what sound is that? That is another. But that just first moment of experiencing, that object and recognizing it as something, being able to aware, it doesn't use any mental images. And also you don't have to do the you can say you don't have to do like big calculation as how the conceptual minds do. Definitely there's still causes and conditions happening there very fast, but still it's not as coarse as how you think, oh, that is a sound, or that is a beautiful flower. And also if I touch something, I feel something directly. So these are very powerful feelings that we have, and it makes big difference. But these themselves actually is a not big problem, because they experience and that's it. It doesn't really make the story, all the story, to shape us how we react. Now, almost in our life, especially what we call suffering or happiness, if you look at all these disturbing emotions, they are not like direct perception. Somehow direct perception is the kind of like a seed, but its actual thing is not direct perception. It's all this conceptual perception, conceptual, I don't know if you can call it perception, cognition, conceptual. So let's say disappointment, anger, jealousy, all these are the conceptual cognitions, experiences. Now why I'm saying this is that conceptual are fundamentally error, in the sense that you're making a story based on sound, presumption images, and the the prediction about the future events. Okay, so let's say you say something to me. Yeah, I heard it. My ear will hear that sound that will comes into. But what my ear will hear is that just a sound, a certain kind of sound. But after that, because of my habit, my concept, will I get angry because of that sound? Usually not. I get angry because I try to make sense of that sound, And then I go back what you said, what you did in past, and I will also make assumption what you're gonna do, or what you're thinking, or what you might be able to do to me in the future. So when I put all these my assumption, my presumptions together, and that's we call angry. Anger. And that's what makes anger as anger. So all these mental image of you and the past and future presumptions and assumptions, of course it will be entirely based on my interpretation. It doesn't have to be reality. It's just my, what do you call perception, my concept, my conceptual. So if you break down the anger, this is the what anger. You have a presumption of past, you have an assumption about future, prediction about future, completely influenced by your right now feeling uncomfortable, and then exaggerating it a lot. That's what you have, the anger. When you do that. Of course it happens very quickly, so we don't see that. And then we make a lot of story, out of that. Why you did that, what is behind that, what you are thinking, and what you are possible, so many things. So what I'm trying to say is that static perception is not a big problem in our daily life actually. The problem is this conceptual mind. What is desire? Same. And all the jealousy, everything is triggered by this habit. We can call it the ignorant, not knowing the reality, not knowing the influencing it, and then taking it as something that is. And then once you have that kind of mindset, it doesn't just stay there, it will influence how you react, what you do physically, what you say, and also the continuity of your mind, whether you will be disturbed or not, will be carried out by that mind. So when we do the meditation, first recognizing what is disturbed mind, what is undisturbed mind. And when you just look at what is disturbed mind, you can look at causes, conditions, and its functions. Then if you really dissect the disturbing mind itself, then you will see more clearly. So how does that help you is that when you don't know that, it seems that anger is one thing and it will be there and it will just come. I cannot do anything, right? It's there. I just see one lump anger coming out of nowhere, even though I don't want it. I don't know why, but I get angry, it seems. But when you look at that, when you observe closely, there's so many things we can do. If you know the causes and condition in detail, you can do the causes and undo the causes and condition. That means you can actually control the anger. So this is the reason, this is the purpose of doing that. Because if you dissect them, you will know it fully. If you don't do that, and then just says, I have this emotion, and I don't know why, but it comes there, it disturbs me. I cannot do anything. So now, the bad news about the conceptual mind is that it doesn't really matter whether it is good one or bad one, but it is always a error one, in the sense that your experience is not direct, it is inferential. It means you are trying to replicate something based on your mental image, perception, something like that. You know? So it doesn't really matter whether it's good or bad, but it is will be always not the direct perception. Not the direct means it's always a mental image. It will be always conceptualized in that sense. So I can think about water, I can think about fire, but it will be always my conceptualized fire, conceptualized water. It will never be the real fire or in that sense. So I won't be able to drink it or use it, because it's conceptualized. But the good thing, especially in a meditation, is that in the direct perception, it's like several of that kind of mind can work simultaneously in one domain. Means, according to the direct perception, right, I can have many kinds of mind at the same time, and they don't cancel each other. So that means feeling, hearing, something like that. But the good thing about the conceptual mind is that conceptual mind always has some sort of off and on. Meaning, okay, so when I say conceptual, I mean, let's say let's say when we look it from here and we see smoke, okay, and then what comes into my mind? There must be fire, right? But did I see fire? No. But I saw something. Because of the direct perception of my eye, seeing the smoke, I make assumption, there's a fire. Based on my experience of fire, especially the relationship. So I have a valid relationship. I know that fire comes, the smoke comes from the fire, right? It doesn't happen randomly. If it happens randomly, then it will be hard to say there is a fire, because it might be, if let's say fire comes, the smoke sometimes comes from fire, sometimes comes from the water, then we cannot be really sure to say, oh, there is a fire, but it doesn't. So I know that. So this is presumption. I already know the relationships. What is the relationship with the fire, and what is the relationship with the smoke, and what is not. But I know there's a fire, and you can call it valid. Reason is that even though I didn't see it, so how do you know? Because there's a valid relationship between the fire and the smoke, and I saw the smoke directly. There's no doubt. So through the smoke, I can establish the fire, existence of fire. And this is what we call the, even though it is conceptualized, but still I have some reason that to be valid, not randomly, yeah. So now, the good thing about the conceptual mind is that when you have one kind of that mind off, meaning, let's say, let's say when I see this object and oh, this is a beautiful flower, right? Of course you can have a three, but usually if you dissect the neutral one, you will also always find like or dislike. It's usually not really neutral, but since we just call it neutral. So this mind, it cannot be both I like, I dislike. Okay? So which means if I like this flower, it means it automatically cancels I dislike. Cannot be both at the same time. So if I dislike this flower, it automatically cancels I like this flower, mine. So unlike the direct perception, since the conceptual mind works comparatively, it works on the law of comparison. Existing fire, non-existent fire. Good, bad. He said something to me, good thing, he said something bad, always like this duality. So that's why if you get angry to somebody, okay, that means you don't have a compassion to that person. So when you practice compassion, it will automatically eliminate the angry to that person, because these are two opposite, off and on conceptual mind. So you cannot have both at the same time to the same object. It doesn't work that way. And because of that, if you practice compassion, if you practice selfless, it automatically neglects the habit of the anger or the selfishness. So you can say the bad news is that it is somehow, because of it is conceptualized, it's always a little bit confused. But good news is that when you train yourself through the conceptual mind, it is always negates automatically the opposite of that mind. And that's quite powerful actually. And that's why meditation works. Because you cannot have a both disturbing mind and not disturbing mind at the same time. So when you have a disturbing mind, the calm mind always negates, cancels automatically. When you have a calm mind, the disturbing mind automatic, because both of them are opposite conceptual mind. So it's like a darkness and light. Because of that, when we practice our compassion, let's say just sitting like that, doing nothing, and the moment you practice compassion, maybe you're doing nothing, you're just trying to, that's what we do in the session, for example, the 4 boundless practice, you're just trying to imagining it, and actually you're doing nothing, nothing's happening, but you're just imagining it, because the moment you practice, all the other emotions have no space in your mind. It really kind of like takes all your mind energy space into the positive, and there's no space for the negative mind to come. Usually in our daily life it's almost like off on, right? One moment you have compassion, one moment anger, so many things, so there's no continuity. And that's why when you practice sensation, even though you're not doing it anything, but actually you're doing it, but not physically, but in the mind. So you're trying to make the all energy, all the space of mind filled with the positive conceptual mind, so that there's no space for negative mind. So it means if you practice, let's say 2 minutes compassion, you're cutting the continuity of anger for 2 minutes. That's quite a lot actually, if you look at the mind streamline. And similarly, when you practice the shamatha, focusing, let's say, on this light, when you focus this light for 1 minute, you stop all the other possibilities, anger, jealousy, conceptual mind, history. You stop making story. That's actually how meditation works, because your mind is 100% focused, and all the space of your mind is taken by your focus. There's no other space for that mind. Let's look at like anger, anger. Anger, of course, it depends on who you are, and also the more you do, more it becomes your autopilot, You get more angry, and next time it's easier, and it becomes more and more and more. So what is happening is that once you get angry and you didn't do anything, and it goes, and then second time, third time, so the space, is almost like taken by the anger. So it's very easy to connect. So if you're naturally angry, you means small things, it can be very easy to get angry. Why? Because you are almost like ready. Your mind space is full of that. It just needs a small like a trigger. So let's say it's like this. When the water, because if the water is like a waterfall, it's very difficult to block, It has a lot of force, naturally. Why? Because the speed, the gap between the first and the second is very close. So that's why there's a force, there's a speed. So everything is flowing very fast, there's no in between. It's same like our emotions. So as a practitioner, what you do, what happens when you try to make the gap longer? It slows down, isn't it? If you put the gap very shorter, it becomes more powerful and more quick, and when you put the gap in between, it becomes slow and a little bit less power. I'm not sure if it works in like physics, probably, I don't know. But if you put the more, let's say sound, why sound travels very easily? When you close the door, it doesn't travel that, because it has a obstruction somewhere between it, so it cannot travel that way, right? So it's same like our anger. So you have to make the gap between, and when you do that, you're automatically kind of softening your anger. by doing that. And let's imagine that anger is like shouting. So you just close the door, in between somewhere. More you put the door, more the better. And if you have a soundproof door, that will be very good. Yeah? You just see someone is moving their mouth, but you don't hear anything, so it doesn't make much difference to you. So it's same with our ego actually. The more you have this egoistic, ego is walking, ego is reacting, ego is confronting, you become a more and more difficult. And the less you put some gap with the ego, it's better. So you can say the flow or the rhythm of our emotion. You have to break down by putting gap, and automatically there's no strong continuity, no flow. We are breaking the flow, like how you break the water, yeah, something like that. And we can do that into our mind as well. Of course, it sounds a little bit irrational or impractical, but actually it's not, because normally we never do that. We don't try that. If you try, and then when emotionally you are, whether it's ego or jealousy, if you just really look back and dissect that feeling, and unbiasedly, usually what happens is our ego always takes place and becomes biased. But if you really observe it biasedly, we can do that. And this is one important method of working with our emotions, and we call it there's the three methods to work with our balance, our mind, and this is the third one actually, looking at the nature of our emotion and dissecting it, observing it. So first you have to understand the difference between the direct perception and the conceptual perception, cognition, and then you have to recognize whether this is healthy or unhealthy, in terms of whether it is disturbing emotions or not. And once you do that, and then you have to dissect it and penetrate it one by one. So at the beginning it seems a little bit getting worse, because when you get angry and try to not be angry, and you become more angry, yeah. But then actually after a few times it becomes your habit. So the moment something happens, you always look back rather than making a story, because most of the time when something happens, you start writing the story, yeah, storybook. So try not to write the book based on your conceptual presumption and assumptions, and because most of the time that book is usually quite a negative books. Now, having said that, actually when we practice, many of our path practice itself is this conceptual mind. Of course, you can practice going beyond that conceptual mind, but it happens later, it doesn't happen. So yes, conceptual mind is conceptual, especially in the Buddhism. We believe that you can go to the non-conceptual in this concept, the non-duality conceptual, yeah, because right now my non-conceptual or direct perception it's a direct, but still it's a duality. There's a clinging, there's a ignorance. But you can reach the place non-conceptual, non-duality place through the conceptual path. So this is the fundamental belief of Buddhism. So are you going directly to there, or you go a little bit step by step? That depends on who you are, how you flow, which path. But the basic idea is that if it is conceptual, doesn't mean it is a useless. It's a very useful, actually. All our paths are conceptual, but the thing is that it has to be a healthy conceptual mind. Even though it is a error, it doesn't matter. Like, for example, conceptualizing the fire by seeing the smoke, it's not a deceiving. If I go there, I will see the fire. But until I reach to the fire, still it's a conceptualize, right? It's an error in a way. But I need to have some sort of structure, because I have to have I know very clear the relationship between the fire and the smoke, so that's why it works. And similarly, when we try to analyze and trying to say what is right, what is wrong, what is healthy, what is handy, we have to have a certain kind of structures based on some we call it the 4 kinds of logic or something like that in Buddhism. So you have to rely on that, because otherwise you do randomly, and then it doesn't work. So you have to follow certain kind of principles to do that, and it makes sense if you follow that principles. So for example, in Buddhism we talk about 4 kind of reasons to analyze things. And there's 3 kind of objects to be analyzed. For example, let's say if it is an object of direct perception, that is one thing, such as something that I can touch. So I don't have to ask anybody or read a book to know that, this is my feeling. I just know it by myself through the direct perception. And there's a certain thing that is a hidden. So for example, like we call it the object of conceptual mind or object of inferential logic. Still it's a true, but still you don't know exactly, you don't experience directly. For example, the fire. Okay, there is a fire, it does a true, but still until I go there, it's not. But I'm following certain kind of rules, because of that it works. So we call it the hidden object, or indirect. Okay, so there are certain things, for example, impermanent. Coarse impermanence I see. For example, if I break this down, it will break. This I know, but I still cannot see this clock. Actually, it's momentarily changing. Because for me, according to my eye and my knowledge, is that it seems like it's not changing at all, but actually it's not true. Clock is, because each second is different, isn't it? Will there be any same second in this world? No. Each minute is different. It will never come back. Yeah, we know that. But still I cannot see that. But I have a logic. If I rely on certain logic, and I can prove, so I can conceptualize from the conceptual inference. I might understand it, but still I might not be able. So this is what we call the hidden object. That's why you need a inferential logic to prove that. So impermanent, and there are certain things. These are we call it thoroughly, or it's a very hidden for us, because we have a very limited sense. So such as I can prove through the logic certain quite a good way that this clock is impermanent, and you might be convinced. But if I have to prove, let's say like, hell exists or heaven exists or your next life exists. Of course, I can use certain, logic and experience and explanations, assumptions and presumptions, but still it won't be that easy as I can prove that this is impermanent, because it's quite far from our experience and conceptual mind both. And this is what we call the strong or very, very hidden to our experience and the sense. Because of that, we call the three kind of valid principles that you rely on in order to work with it. It doesn't have to be separate, but generally said, the direct principle or direct perception principle, that means, this is my senses, so nobody has to explain me. I know that by myself, from my awareness. One thing. And the inferential, the second thing. And based on certain kind of principles, or this is impermanent because it is compounded, or it sooner or later it changes or it destroys something like that. And now the third one, we have to rely on the scriptures. We have to believe in, like, let's say, it is not entirely but mostly like Buddha said it in the sutra or something like that. You can of course investigate, analyze, but basically this becomes the, so we have a three kind of method to investigate. The three kind of object. So we have three objects: direct, hidden, and I don't know how to use what do they call it? Utterly hidden, something like that.
Completely hidden.
Completely hidden. And thoroughly. And then we have three kind of valid cognitions: the direct valid cognition, inferential valid cognition, and the scriptural valid cognition. But of course, and finally, this scriptural is not the main. Scriptural, okay, so our own somehow comes down to our experience. Our experience, the scripture is less important than the inferential logic. Inferential logic is less important than direct perception. So direct perception becomes the number one, conceptual is number two, and the scripture. But this, I think, is not that important in our daily life in a way. So we have to mostly work with these two. And this is, so when we say, it goes back to, it means that, actually we call it the yogic direct experience. So, for example, if you ask this certain kind of people who have a different kind of ability to understand the complete hidden object, he can experience that, but not us. But since right now we don't have that kind of experience, so we only have an ordinary direct perception, not the yogic direct perception. So normally we have to work in this second one. Most of our problems coming from the second one. So we also have most of tools, we can work with the second one, and maybe then combine it with our direct experience, little bit with the inferential logic, then it works very well, these two things. So these are certain components of analytical meditation, understanding the three kind of objects, three kind of ways, and the three kind of minds. And basically coming down to understand the conceptual mind. That is the key point, and dissecting it and trying to make a gap between the first moment of that, such as emotion, and the second moment, and see how we can slow it down. And when you slow down the gap, you also slow down the habit. That means actually you're transforming. Okay, I'm stop here. Sunam diye tamche sikpani topne nyepe danai pamje ne kega nache balai trupai sipe sole dowa shu.
By this merit may all obtain omniscience, may it defeat the enemy wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may it free all beings.